Today, we're going to follow up on episode 2 and talk a little bit more about onReady. So if you were looking through the API docs on the Velo website, you may have noticed that there's other functions or APIs that have onReady functions. So we want to talk about like when you want to use those, why we even have them, and how they are used on your site. So today we have Joshua here to talk us through the dataset onReady. Hi, Joshua.
Hey, Meredith. I'm excited to talk about dataset onReady today. So let's just jump right into it. So as we learned from the last episode, onReady basically adds an event handler that runs a function once the page is ready to load. So when it comes to dataset onReady, it adds an event handler that runs the dataset when the dataset is ready. So you want to make sure that your data is ready to go before you can actually use it. So in most cases, when it comes to onReady, right, you want to be able to put functions underneath there, and you'll have to do the same thing when you're working with your dataset onReady function. Most Wix dataset functions run properly only if they have been called after the dataset has been loaded or after the data in the dataset has been loaded. So if you're calling a dataset function in the pages onReady function, you should make sure that the dataset ready function is being called by the function you'd like to use inside of the datasets onReady function. So it's a lot of different words, but we can actually just jump into an example and see how that actually looks. So we can know the ins and outs of what we have to do moving forward. Should we jump into the API docs and just look at that for a bit?
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in because that was a lot of onReadys and functions, and it'd be helpful, I think, for the audience to see it in action.
Yeah,
And can you also
absolutely.
tell us what would happen if we don't put our dataset function inside of an onReady for the dataset?
Yeah, so it's a lot. So if we don't put that function inside of the onReady function for the page itself, that data actually won't load. So we actually don't even need to put the onReady function for data inside of an event handler or anything else like that, because you can assume that that data has already been loaded. So you want to either have that inside your onReady function or not inside of an event handler. So that's one of the best ways to explain it, because there's so many different ways with this onReady. So let's just jump into the API docs for a sec. So you can see here, it's pretty straightforward with the API docs, and use the onReady function allows you to optionally perform actions right after the dataset is loaded from the collection and update all connected pages and elements within their corresponding values. So you can use this either with a dataset and even with a dynamic dataset as well. And the only difference between a dataset and a dynamic dataset is just that the dynamic dataset is for dynamic pages and it's created with that. So you'll still be able to use this dataset onReady function with a dynamic dataset. You'll just have to use the correct ID. That's it. So let's jump into an example to show how to actually format, a dataset onReady function.
That'd be super helpful because we've been talking a lot about functions and onReady. So let's take a look at where we use them, how we use them, and where we want to put the function of what we want to do with the data wrapped in all these onReadys.
Yeah. So this episode's a big tongue twister for sure. So we have our editor open. So right now I'm just using editor X, and of course you can use Velo in both editor X or the classic editor. And I have a collection inside of my databases here of some different courses. So I have some other courses like, let's say, for example, I have UX and mobile, typography, tap targets, product design, you name it. So it's about 6 different courses that are here inside of our collection, and a few other items that are there as well. And inside this, and what we want to do next with this collection, since we have all this data already stored, we want to be able to work with it the way we can with this API. So we have to then create a data set. We already have one here. And the way to find that in editor X, you just go right here to the content manager. You can add a content element, add a data set, and then you can actually go into the settings and just go right here and choose the data set you want. So in this case, I'm choosing courses, and we're going to keep it at read only, and we can display this however we want if we want to create a whole front end experience for it. But for right now, we'll just keep it to some logs. So what we want to do now, we have this onReady function on the bottom here inside of our IDE. And inside of our onReady function, we want to be able to right now get the ID of our data set. So our data set here, once we click it, we can see that our ID is dataset 1. So let's go down to the bottom here, and let's actually just select our data set and then use the onReady function. So we have to make sure our onReady function for the dataset onReady is inside of our pages onReady function. So let's just start here by selecting our dataset. So say $W, and our dataset is dataset 1. So for our dataset 1, again, we want to use our onReady function. And this onReady function is going to be able to, once the page is loaded, this data is going to actually load as well. So that's what the function that we're creating right now. So see onReady. And you can see we also have it here onReady. And then what we'll do next with our onReady function now. Okay, cool. So after we've created our onReady function for our data set, we want to then add some other functions with inside of it. So what we'll do here with this function, we're going to create a simple function just to go through the first few items within our collection. So we're going to use the get items function that comes with Wix dataset. All right, so we'll select the dataset again. Dataset 1. And we're going to use the get items. And from get items, what we'll do is we're going to actually select the number of, or the index that we want to start from, and the number of items that we want to come back. So we're just going to start from index 0. And then let's say we want 4 items back, right? So from there, we have to then return a promise as well. So let's see with our results. So we can have our result here is going to be our amount of items. We can also do like total item count or the offset. So let's just get back all of our items to begin with. So we'll do let items, and then we'll do result dot items. So we can also come back and console log that as well if you want to get like total count of items as well. Let total count result dot total count, and we'll get the total number back. So let's just console log those items. We can also do another console log separately. Total count. Cool. So let's go over to preview mode and check this out. So once the page loads, we should be able to get our total count right there of 6. That's our total count of items there, but we only wanted to see the first 4 items inside of our collection here. So we have our first item here. This is our first course for our UX and mobile. We also have our lessons and so forth. And that's what we can log back from using Dataset onReady. So there's a lot of different ways for you to explore Dataset onReady and to use it. Of course, you can create other functions afterwards to perform after the data has been loaded and so forth. So definitely check out the documentation and some of the other functions we have surrounding Wix data and Wix dataset.
Awesome. So that get items function wouldn't work if we put it outside of the dataset onReady. Is that right?
So if we put this outside of the dataset onReady function, it will not work. You can assume that the data is already ready, but if we were to put this inside of a event handler, we cannot assume this data to load.
Makes sense. So we want to make sure that data is there, just like we have the $W onReady, because we want to make sure that the page elements are loaded before we start working with them. We want to use that data set onReady to make sure the data is ready to be worked with too.
Yep, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Joshua, for showing this today. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the data set onReady?
No, that's it. Just check out the API docs, and there's definitely a lot of examples on the example page that use dataset onReady. It's pretty simple.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. And for the rest of you guys, stay tuned for more from Vibing with Velo.
Cool. Stay vibing.